Welcome to Revealing the Gospel channel. We're diving into the ancient story of Sodom and Gomorrah, two cities infamous for their destruction by divine intervention. Throughout history, these cities have been symbols of moral decay, and their story has been a cautionary tale about the consequences of unchecked wrongdoing. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah is best known from the book of Genesis in the Bible, but versions of it also appear in other religious and historical texts. It describes a moment when God decided to eradicate these cities because of their wickedness. But what exactly were the sins that led to such a severe response? In this video we're going to explore the 5 key sins attributed to Sodom and Gomorrah. We'll examine each one and look at why these actions were seen as deeply immoral, ultimately leading to the city's destruction. By the end of this video, I hope you'll have a deeper understanding of this powerful story and the timeless moral lessons it offers. To understand why Sodom and Gomorrah met such a tragic end, we need to first set the stage with some background. Sodom and Gomorrah were cities located in the Jordan Valley, a lush and prosperous region. This area was known for its natural resources and fertile land, making it a desirable place to live. The people in these cities enjoyed considerable wealth and comfort, which, as we'll see, may have contributed to their moral downfall. In the story, the figure of Abraham plays a significant role. Abraham, who lived nearby, was a devout man with a close relationship to God. One day, God revealed to Abraham that the wickedness of Sodom and Gomorrah had become unbearable and that he intended to destroy the cities. Abraham, out of compassion and concern for any good people who might be living there, pleaded with God to spare the cities if righteous individuals could be found within them. They agreed that if 10 righteous people could be found, the cities would be spared. 2 angels were then sent to Sodom to investigate. However, upon their arrival, they found no sign of repentance or righteousness among the people. Instead, they encountered hostility and violence, behaviors that seemed to confirm the city's reputation for wickedness. Our exploration of the sins begins with pride and arrogance, which the Bible often describes as a root sin that opens the door to other moral failures. Pride is the excessive belief in one's own abilities or status, often leading people to disregard moral guidelines and see themselves as above others or even above God. The people of Sodom and Gomorrah, as described in the book of Ezekiel 16:49, were arrogant, overfed, and unconcerned. This pride led them to view themselves as self-sufficient and morally autonomous, not accountable to God or to any higher moral law. Their prosperity only deepened this pride, convincing them that they didn't need to abide by societal norms or ethical responsibilities. Arrogance often blinds people to their flaws, and this was true in Sodom and Gomorrah. They didn't feel they had to answer to anyone. This sense of entitlement is often seen in cultures or individuals who accumulate wealth or power, believing that their success justifies any behavior. This pride in Sodom and Gomorrah laid the groundwork for the other sins to take root, as it allowed the people to ignore their moral responsibilities and pursue their own desires without restraint. The second sin was their shocking inhospitality, coupled with a complete lack of compassion for others. In ancient cultures, especially in the Middle East, hospitality wasn't just a cultural expectation, it was a moral duty. Travelers and strangers depended on the kindness of locals, especially in unfamiliar or harsh environments. Welcoming strangers and offering them food, water, and safety was seen as an honorable duty, a reflection of one's character and values. But in Sodom, when 2 angels arrived disguised as travelers and sought refuge with Lot, one of the few righteous men, the townspeople responded with hostility rather than welcome. The townsmen surrounded Lot's home, demanding that he bring the strangers out so they could abuse them. This was a shocking violation of hospitality and compassion. This extreme inhospitality was an expression of a society that had lost its moral compass. The people saw others, especially outsiders, not as human beings deserving respect, but as opportunities for exploitation. In the story, their treatment of strangers becomes a sign of their deep moral corruption, demonstrating how they abandoned fundamental values like kindness and empathy. For ancient listeners of this story, such inhospitality would have been seen as an unforgivable offense, highlighting the depths of Sodom and Gomorrah's wickedness. The third sin, and perhaps the most frequently discussed, was sexual immorality. This sin is often associated with Sodom's legacy, even giving rise to the term sodomy. But to fully understand this part of the story, it's important to look beyond specific acts and consider what they represented in the broader moral landscape. In Genesis 19, the men of Sodom demand that Lot bring out his guests so they can forcefully know them, which many interpretations suggest was an attempt to sexually violate them. This shocking behavior demonstrates not only a disregard for the stranger's dignity but also an alarming level of moral decay. The city's people had abandoned any restraint over their desires, showing a willingness to violate others to satisfy their impulses. The significance of this sin is not merely in the act itself but in what it represented: a society that had lost all respect for boundaries and for the humanity of others. Sexual immorality, in this context, reflected a deeper problem: the objectification of others and the treatment of people as tools for gratification rather than as individuals with inherent worth. This form of moral decline is often seen in cultures that place self-interest above mutual respect, a recurring warning in many religious and ethical traditions. The fourth sin that characterized Sodom and Gomorrah was violence and injustice. Throughout religious teachings, violence and oppression are strongly condemned. In ancient societies, justice was a cornerstone, and it was the duty of communities to protect the vulnerable and uphold fairness. But Sodom and Gomorrah were infamous for their injustices. The powerful preyed on the weak, and there was little regard for fairness or the rule of law. Historical interpretations of this story suggest that the cities had become places where the most vulnerable had no protection and where violence was both rampant and accepted. This culture of violence and injustice was more than just physical abuse. It was a complete social breakdown, where the rights of individuals were disregarded, and those with power exploited those without. When communities allow unchecked violence and injustice, they undermine the very fabric of social trust, eroding any hope for a just and fair society. Sodom and Gomorrah became examples of how a lack of justice can lead to the collapse of a society's moral foundation. The fifth sin that contributed to Sodom and Gomorrah's downfall was indifference to the poor and needy. Ezekiel 16 verse 49, which provides one of the most explicit condemnations of Sodom, states that the people did not help the poor and needy. Despite their wealth and prosperity, the people of Sodom and Gomorrah turned a blind eye to those who were suffering. In many ancient cultures, taking care of the poor was considered a sacred duty. In the Bible, caring for the needy is frequently highlighted as a moral responsibility. But in Sodom and Gomorrah, the wealthy residents indulged in their prosperity without a thought for those in need. This disregard for the vulnerable reflects a society so consumed by its own desires that it could no longer see beyond them. This sin of indifference is not only an ancient concern. It's a reminder that a society's health is often judged by how it treats its most vulnerable members. When wealth and power blind people to the suffering around them, they lose their moral center. The indifference of Sodom and Gomorrah became a symbol of this failure, underscoring the message that a community without compassion is bound for ruin. After Abraham's intercession and the angel's investigation, it was clear that Sodom and Gomorrah were beyond redemption. Apart from Lot and his family, no one could be found who upheld righteousness. The angels urged Lot and his family to leave immediately, warning them not to look back. As Lot and his family fled, God unleashed a fiery destruction on Sodom and Gomorrah, raining down fire and brimstone. The destruction of the cities was complete. Nothing was left but ash and ruins, and even Lot's wife, who disobeyed the command and looked back, was turned into a pillar of salt. The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah serves as a dramatic display of divine justice. It is a powerful reminder that a society that abandons all moral restraint may ultimately face dire consequences. This story has resonated for thousands of years, serving as a cautionary tale about the dangers of allowing moral decay to go unchecked. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah, while ancient, offers timeless lessons. The 5 sins, pride, inhospitality, sexual immorality, violence and injustice, and indifference to the poor, are moral failings that any society can be vulnerable to. The story encourages us to reflect on our own lives and communities, asking whether we too sometimes fall into these traps. While the sins of Sodom and Gomorrah are extreme, they remind us to examine our own hearts and actions. Are we showing compassion to those around us? Do we hold ourselves accountable? Are we standing up against injustice and violence? And perhaps most importantly, are we willing to help those in need? As we conclude, consider these questions and how you might make positive changes in your own life to avoid the moral pitfalls that led to Sodom and Gomorrah's destruction. Thank you for watching this deep dive into the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. The lessons from this story encourage us to reflect on our own character and society, challenging us to live lives of integrity, compassion, and responsibility. If you found this video thought-provoking, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share it with others. Let's keep the discussion going. Share your thoughts in the comments below on what you think are the most important lessons from this story. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.